Awesome. Over to you.
We're set to go.
Yes.
Let's go. I'm Dean. This more about me in a minute. This is first, say this to them. And so it's how to write a hook. And a hook, oh, let me get this going. There we go. This is the wordiest, I think, slide in the entire thing. And it's just this. The hook is not, if something's the first sentence on your web page or your spiel or your pitch or your subject line, that doesn't make it a hook. It's a hook when you've done 90% of the thinking and feeling on behalf of the person who's going to read it, so that they don't have to do much. You're going to see this slide a few times because it's some of the hooks that I've written for various clients, and I'm going to show examples. So we're going to pull from this, so you don't have to get into this slide yet. But basically, when you're going in for a first kiss, you know, you go sort of 90% of the way there, and if your like partner wants to move in, they only have to do the 10%. You cover most of the distance and take up most of the decisioning for them. And the only decision that person has to make is, do I want to, like, you know, kiss this person right now? And then they just move in a little bit. That's a hook in real world terms. And here's the thing about writing hooks. It's not necessarily that there's a formula. It's not hard to write them. If you know how to write any sentence at a high school level or even a middle school level, you know how to write a great hook. The problem is you don't know how to think backwards in order to write a good hook. And that's what we're going to cover today. So some different perception changes. We're going to talk a little bit about Stephen Covey. We're going to talk a little bit about the Stone Age. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. Okay, so the first shift in thinking is people start with thinking, okay, here's what I want to say, and here's what I want to tell someone. And we're going to get into why that's a terrible idea and no one cares about you. And there's freedom in that. But the thing is, you spend a lot of your time. I do a lot of work in advertising. And we really do think that the headline is 80% of the work in writing something, especially an ad, in that most people are only going to give you a second or two of courtesy attention if you manage to get their attention. And so a lot of work goes into, or a lot of time and tweaking goes into the first thing you ever tell anyone, because if they're not intrigued by that, if that doesn't make them curious, they don't stick around for the rest, no matter how great and useful and insightful and informative the rest of your content is. That hook, it carries a lot of weight relative to any other sentence in the rest of your content. Okay, so I don't know if that's going to work. Yeah, it is. So just real quick about me, I typically write the first thing that a prospect will see for most of my clients. I'll either help them decide what a client should see first, or I will actually like work through it and write for them what it is that they're going to need to do. I'm not going to stay on this slide very long, but I've done this a lot for a long time. And the hook's job, we're going to close out this section. The hook's job is to make someone want closure through understanding you or learning more about you. Okay, I personally get a lot of freedom from the fact that very few people ever care about any of the people that I work for. We like to think that people are interested in our topic, our subject, our domain, our expertise, and then they're going to put in the emotional and attention and time investment to dig into what we want to tell them, and that's almost never the case. And when you accept that you basically need to get in front of a lot of people and give them something that's going to snag them, there's a lot of ego kind of freedom in that. They're not judging you because they don't know about you. This might be the most useful slide in the entire thing. I don't know if people get slides afterwards. I don't know if I'm going to send a PDF, but if you want to take a screenshot or use your phone, this is probably the most useful slide. We start on the left, right? Typically, everyone would start on the left. What do I want to say? And what's the best way for me to say it? And they rarely, if ever, get to the second part, which is, does anyone's going to care about this? And is it worth paying attention?
And then they were going to like, well, can you wait? And the tech's going to come fix it. And I'm like, I'm not sitting here for another hour.
Please mute yourself
It happens. It's
You.
happened to me. Whereas everyone that you're trying to communicate to, they're going right to left. So right off the bat, they're trying to decide, okay, what's going to get my attention? What's going to distract me? What's going to seem urgent or interesting or whatever? And then even after they read your hook, they're going to only get a few seconds into reading this. And you do this all the time. You do this every day. That's, after a few moments, you do kind of a gut check. Like your brain asks your gut, like, do we care about this? And if the answer is no, you're gone and you're on to the next thing. And then only after that is it important how they're talking to you. And only after that is it important what they're trying to say to you. So we start left to right. They're starting right to left. A hook starts where the audience starts and goes right to left. Or another way to put it, show me that you understand me, and then I might put in the effort to understand you if I'm the reader. There are two pitfalls around writing great hooks before we get into more details about it. One is you want to talk to them about them right from the jump. You do not talk about yourself. Now, a lot of people get that and they'll say, okay, well, I'm not supposed to use I or we kind of statements, especially in the beginning, which is true. But they fall into thinking, okay, all I have to do is change it so that it says you or your, and the audience is going to identify with it and feel that I understand them. And that's usually just a hack. It doesn't work very well. I also, by the way, it's not on the slide. We're not going to cover it again. I'm typically against asking a question as the very first thing you ever say to a prospect or reader or any kind of audience. Because again, you ask a question, unless you're really good at framing a question so that it's going to resonate with someone. Basically, asking a question is an assumption that they should make the assumption that you're worth the work to stop and pause and think about what the answer to the question is. And so as a rule, I don't, and I also don't like certain words that you see a lot these days that seem to do the opposite of what it is we're trying to get the audience to do. So for instance, you would never want to start a sentence, a first sentence or a hook with the word imagine, because the first thing that happens when you say imagine, nobody imagines anything. They stop imagining and they just read the rest of your sentence. But then it's like, okay, what was the point of that? So there are a handful of words like imagine that you would almost never want to put in a hook because it actually shuts down the process of the reader projecting themselves into the negative present or positive future, which we'll talk about in a second, that they might be in. So don't use the word imagine or enable or align or any sort of corporate synergy words. Those don't mean anything and they don't resonate with anybody. Okay, so this is the part of the conversation that I have with clients where some of them get it right away and some of them we have to go through a slide or two to explain it. But it's simply this. And I knew the Stone Age was a thing, right? And I knew there was an Iron Age and a Bronze and a Copper and like an Industrial Revolution. And I knew that there were like epochs in human history. But on a documentary just a few months ago, I saw this statistic and I said, that cannot be true. And it turns out it's not necessarily true. Some people say we only spent 98% of our entire humankind's history in the Stone Age, not 99.999. But still, we've spent virtually all of our history, not here, which started about 5,000 years ago, and that's basically when recorded history started. We started it there. Every other epoch came and it got shoved into the last 5,000 years or so, 5,300 years or so. So whether you think that human beings started and their brains and their minds and what will resonate with them started evolving 4 million years ago when we branched off from the apes, or 2.5 million years ago when sort of the first human species, there have been several, started walking around. We've spent virtually all of our time and all of our brain development dealing with rocks and sticks as the only tools we had. We're not modern. And that means that the first moment of everyone's attention you're trying to talk to is deeply rooted in the Stone Age brain. And they also didn't evolve to look at the world through other people's eyes. Like that's an intellectual exercise. And so we suck at it too. So it's completely normal and natural that, and it's not your fault that like you don't default when you're going to be writing to someone where you want something from them or you're trying to persuade them. It's not your fault. It's not my fault either, that the default is to just try to push something out at them instead of seeing it through their eyes. We didn't evolve that way. We evolved to survive against threats and not to see things through other human beings' perspectives. And one example of that is that I could take, assuming that I could teach them in English quickly, I could take anybody from the Stone Age and I can drop them in front of your Gmail inbox, and they're going to scan and sort that inbox the same way that you do today, which is first, they're going to look for anything that's urgent. They're going to look for any kind of danger. Then they're going to look for any kind of novelty, something new that doesn't seem to fit, right? Anything that's distracting or entertaining, might give them a small sense of accomplishment, whatever. They're going to look at anything that they know they might have to deal with at some point, but they can postpone that for now. And then everything else they're going to forget, just the same way you do today. And so one of the ways that we fight against this is people will say, no, like, I don't want to do that though, Dean. I want to say X, and I want to show off something that's really technical. I mostly work for STEM companies, technology and engineering heavy kind of companies, right? And you can decry this or you can optimize for it. And the people who decry it, it's like, well, I don't want other people to perceive things the way people have always perceived things for 4 million years. They should come and meet me 50-50. Nobody's going to meet you 50-50. That's why you need to go 90% of the way. Or as I told my kids growing up, feelings are real. They are not reality. And no matter how invulnerable this guy feels, right, it will not survive contact with fire in his mouth. So essentially, you invert yourself and think about what they're going to feel and understand and want to know about. And you understand that the Stone Agedness, that's a word, is your friend in writing an opening sentence or a headline or an email subject line that's going to resonate with someone else. All right, so let's get out of the Stone Age. We spent enough time in here. Okay, so here's an example, right? That one in the middle, like it's your turn. We're going to go get a couple examples in a second. That's the most classic Stone Agey kind of thing. Like a lot is going on in those 3 words. And every single person here has either typed that sentence or read that sentence or could type that sentence at any point today. But there's a lot going on there, right? We're going to get into time. We're going to get into sort of empathy. We're going to get into you not being a jackass, me not being a jackass, and instead, trying to get inside someone else's skin and think about stuff. But I mean, that's very short, but it's very visceral. It's also an especially good headline for an executive coaching company, which is the website that, I wrote it for, that, and who paid me for it. It is her turn to start, getting into the positive future that she wants to get into. Very Stone Agey. Okay. And then the last sort of shift for writing something that someone else would care about and feel like you understood them is to consider, and we're going to go through these examples, basically how time works inside people's minds, a little bit of empathy, why assertiveness matters so much in what you're going to write, and doing the emotional labor for your reader. So let's talk about time. 2 concepts of time. There's 2 slides for time. The first is that everyone that you're going to be talking to is in a negative present. If the present wasn't negative, they don't need to learn or solve anything because there's no problem to deal with. And for the most part, there's a negative future that we could go into and that kind of stuff. But for the most part, you're going to consider that they're in a negative present and they want to get to a positive future. And if you phrase it right, you're the shortcut to the positive, or your client, in my case, right? My client is the shortcut to a positive future. If they just give my client money, to be blunt about it. And so as far as time goes, there's a present that's not good and a idealized future that is good. And you want to balance those 2. And ideally, like the headline, "It's Your Turn," manages to put the negative present and the positive future in just 3-word sentence. So you can balance it that way, understanding that you have these chronological concepts and everyone is in one and wants to get to the other. They either want to well, we call this the push and the pull. They either want a solution that helps them push the negative present behind them, or they see and you're going to talk about in your hook, a positive future that you want to pull them into. But it's one or the other. Everyone's always trying to either push away pain or pull towards pleasure. It's kind of like a truism in copywriting. The other is understanding your business and where it falls in, or your solution and where it falls inside your customers' concept of the life cycle of a problem. So if you sell something that prevents a problem, like vitamins or car insurance or preventive maintenance of any kind or toothpaste, you're on the prevention side. And so you just, you shape your message around prevention as opposed to any other part of this. Most, by far, B2B, which is mostly where I work, most B2B concepts are around mitigation. Most companies do not buy something in order to prevent something from going wrong, or if they do, it's still a hard sell. Mitigation means something's happening right now. Like the negative present is both negative and very, very present. And so we talk about mitigation and fixing the problem. You'll see this everywhere, like what are their pain points? And, what are they trying to achieve? That's all mitigation stuff. And then sometimes in some industries, there's a certain amount of money to be made selling into the suffering phase. So physiotherapy, hospice care, both very much in the suffering phase. If you sell opioids, don't sell opioids, but if you did sell opioids, like that's definitely in the suffering phase. Those are people that, are hurting, and you don't make them better. You just help them, cope. And there are B2B examples for suffering as well, right? And factoring, if you know what factoring is, for receipts, buying the money that a company is owed and for a discount, and then going after those people and getting the money. That's kind of a suffering kind of thing. You could call that prevention or mitigation, but generally nobody's selling at a discount the money that should be coming in unless they already have a pretty bad problem. And this doesn't fix it. It just sort of, alleviates some of their immediate suffering. So just a quick recap on time. They're in a negative present. You're offering a shortcut to a positive future if they give you money. And you are selling into one of these phases of a problem's life cycle. And you just, this isn't usually a choice. Usually the business already exists and it's selling into one of these three phases. When I have a new client, I just ask them, which of these phases are you selling into? And 8 times out of 10, it's mitigation. So just a quick recap before we go into a couple of other concepts, and we have a very short discussion about Stephen Covey, is that the writing isn't the hard part for this. Anyone who can write a sentence can write a great hook, right? And knowing what to write isn't that hard either, because I've got a whole workbook I'm going to give you guys through a QR code and a short URL. You can just go and listen, go through the questions and figure out what it is that you would be writing. The hardest part is not thinking about you first, or not thinking about your message or your company first. It's thinking about them first and their situation and what might get their attention. So this is Stephen Covey. I imagine everyone's probably heard his name. He's the guy who wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he inadvertently teaches one of the best lessons about hooks that anyone has ever taught. So he has this demo. Suhav is an author, and I think he had a consulting company, and he worked for a university. And he has this demo about prioritizing the important things in your life, and where if you pour it, he's using this green stuff, little flakes of stuff. It represents sand. So if you pour it in the sand first, and then you take the rocks, and the rocks all have these labels like spirituality and career and family and education, the big things in life. If you pour in the sand first and then try to shove the rocks down into it, it's a lot of work, and you're probably going to end up spilling some stuff. Whereas if you, in the lower picture, if you put in the rocks first, the sand, which represents all the unimportant and, non-urgent and just sort of, the distraction stuff, the stuff that fills life and will fill every day if you're not focused on something, it will just flow in, around and under and above and through the rocks, spaces between the rocks, right? So you don't have to worry about the sand in life. The sand is just going to, find its own way. You only have to focus on the big things. Now, he was not a marketer really, and he certainly wasn't a copywriter. And so when he did this in front of an audience, in their video, you can just find this. These are just screenshots from a YouTube video. There's a ton of examples of this. What Stephen Covey never went into is explain to the audience, who were probably a lot of manager type folks, but we're also salespeople and marketers, is that we act by default like we're one of the rocks in a prospect's life. We act or think like, or conduct ourselves in our marketing and messaging like we're important to the customer, or we represent an area of their life that is important, and we are not. Right? We are just like one piece of sand in their life. And if you try to get someone's attention by pretending like or acting like you're one of the rocks in life instead of one of the pieces of sand, you're going to have a very frustrating time. Whereas if you accept that you're a small piece of someone's distraction attention for today, no matter how important your business is or how urgently you might be able to, help them and so on. If you go in with this sort of humble attitude, like I'm a very small part and my job is to get someone's attention so that I can draw them into my world, then that's where you start. So you're not one of the rocks. I'm not one of the rocks in other people's life. We're a piece of sand. And the approach is to just come at this humbly and understand that what they think is important is what's important, not what you think is important. Certainly not in the very first thing you ever say to them, which is a hook sentence in my world. Okay. So a couple of examples of where the sand is. You'll notice on the left for the project management, for the construction industry software, right? That the people in that world, especially the older guys, the contractors and stuff, they have their truck. Their truck is covered in little slips of paper and then maybe folders, and then someone organizes it into binders, and they resist phone-based or laptop-based construction software and having to use it, even though the general contractor and the project manager sort of need all that information. And so, we had to go through an hour and a half of me asking them a whole bunch of questions that are in the workbook that I'm going to give you guys, until we finally got to the point where someone mentioned, by the way, we all started in the construction industry. And so we designed the software from the ground up so that the grisliest, most, anti-tech person could at least use it enough very easily with just a few taps so that a project manager would have everything that they needed. That took an hour and a half. They've been in business for well over a decade, but had never, ever gone to the customer's point of view and then written to them along those lines. It was always about, we're Microsoft certified, and you can maintain all of your critical paths and spit out all kinds of reports and all this kind of stuff. And so, yeah, but who actually cares? And so you get to so easy to use binders are scared, simple stuff like that. It's just really simple stuff. When you read it, it's like, I paid for that. And yet, time after time in heat maps and response rates and call to action, like it works great because we're starting from their point of view and working backwards, right? There's a lot that they wanted to say, but you have to pick one thing to say first. And that's what we did. I cheated on that one, by the way, in the upper left. Usually, just El Chapo's name is enough to get a bunch of people's attention. So this was written for a video streaming service that are some campaigns for. Okay, you may or may not have heard of Scarf. Scarf is the only hack or cheat that I have in this entire process. And I see at the very bottom, Scarf is often, I see this in marketing a lot, right? It's things that people feel, but science ignores. So, or even economics ignores. We don't normally care about whether people feel like they have status when we're trying to communicate with them, or what kind of certainty we're conveying. And we're going to talk about assertiveness in a second, or their autonomy, or whether they feel they belong, that either you're part of sort of, I hate this word, I'm really sorry to use it, but whether you're part of their tribe or they're part of your tribe, that kind of stuff, or a sense of fairness. If you've ever seen the video they have that they're starting, there's a lot of social science kind of experiments in the last few years, and they make for great videos if you go on YouTube and look for Scarf model and stuff about testing out different things on monkeys and other animals. And if you've ever seen the video that they have where they have the two monkeys in side-by-side cages, they're really close, and they start giving bits of cucumber to each monkey, and each monkey's happy. And then they start giving sort of a trade. I think the monkey gives them a little pebble, drops it outside the cage, and then they give like a bit of cucumber. And then they switch that one monkey keeps getting the cucumber if they start paying sort of with the little rocks, and the other monkey starts getting grapes. And it only takes 2 or 3 grapes before they try to give cucumber again to the first monkey, and he throws it back at him. It's like, no, even monkeys understand fairness, right? And so if you want to talk about how someone's going to be treated fairly or unfairly, you can end up with a really great hook. So SCARF is kind of a cheat, and it's just called the SCARF model. You can Google it, and find it wherever. So here are some examples. These are aimed at people who can make a decision. So if whoever you're talking to could make a purchase decision, it doesn't matter what you're selling, it's a B2C communication, right? And if you are talking to someone who would need buy-in from some other stakeholder in an organization, that is by definition B2B marketing. They're treated differently. They need to be treated differently. But this one happens to be B2C. So you can see this like number 43 here. I maintain a long list of these, and as I sort of think of them or come across them, I just add them to this really long list of these documents that I have. So you're missing out. That's F in SCARF, right? That's fairness. Other people are getting something and you're not getting something. Time's running out, act now. This is actually this sort of scarcity is probably the main core difference between all B2C and B2B marketing, in that there is no scarcity in B2B marketing. Businesses do not buy something that they think might not be available tomorrow or next year. They'll regret underestimating you, that's belonging and that kind of stuff. Things have changed. That's kind of great, right? That's certainty. You had certainty or thought you did, and now you don't. And so things have changed. That's like core for SCARF, certainty. So, and then there are B2B ones as well. But just to go really quickly, here's an example in the lower right, where it says this is for a company, a client that paid me for this. What is there? Sales acceleration, big fractional VP of sales company. And so for their homepage, so sales solved, right? And it's just like, this is kind of a typical B2B kind of thing. And of course, it's your turn. It's clearly a B2C kind of thing. You're talking to one person there. And what's another one? Over on these email subject lines and their rates, where is it? Like, I think my client, definitely like belonging and some level of certainty in that one as well. And then for B2B, they're a little different, but they have to do with you. And this is why B2B is a bit tougher sell. And most of my work's in B2B, is that you have to sort of take someone out of their own head while at the same time conveying that you understand them. And so you get things like competitors who might outpace you, or, if you're already great, or you have capabilities. If you combine them with my company, then you could end up doing, really impressive things, stuff like that. So classic example is the sales acceleration one. Now, once you've moved along those lines, you have to decide what level or tone your messaging is going to have. And there are 3. Virtually everyone who becomes a client, we go and we look at their website. And they're all at level 1. They're all at informational. It's just the underlying message, the sort of covert message across the entire set of their communication is, here's who we are and what we do, or here's who we are and what we sell. And it's just information after information after information after information. And the very first thing we do is figure out for B2B, how we're going to do an aspirational message, which instead of Acme Company talking about Acme Company pretends that they're the reader. And so here, reader, you could be better, or you could be different if you bought what we sell. And then transformational, you rarely see transformational outside of B2C. I've only been able to use it twice across a lot of clients in several years. But transformational, you often find in beauty, fitness, health. If you ever get one of those quasi-scammy sales letters telling you that there's like a secret way to pick stocks or something. That's all transformational kind of stuff. Not all B2C is transformational. Most of it's also aspirational, but there are a few categories that you find over and over that the message is you could not just be different, you could be new. Right? Whatever it is that you most hate about yourself right now or your life, it could be a memory. So that's the underlying sort of tone for transformational. But I mean, in my case, I mostly deal with B2B, which means we almost always move aspirational. And it doesn't mean that everything on a website, for example, a company's website, needs to be aspirational. But the equivalent, the two equivalents on a website for a hook are the headline on the homepage, and then to a lesser degree, the entire homepage itself. The homepage requires much more attention than any other page on the website. The other pages on the website kind of should be informational. People go deeper into a website to get information, but the very first thing they see, you should let them know, right, that you understand them, and you're worth them understanding you. And so you move to an aspirational kind of message. So what's an example here? Okay, in the upper right, this is for another fractional like group firm, is that you can't really see much of this. I apologize, but the business owner who used to be fighting fires every day and lost in the weeds, and the big vision stuff was not part of that person's job anymore, even though they really wanted it to be because they're the founder. This person's having coffee with someone who's just looking for advice on their career or something, and say, okay, well, I've used up all my time. I really appreciate it. And says, I've got time. The business runs itself now, which is the positive future version of where that target audience wants to be. So sort of very typical aspirational as opposed to informational. I forget what the old headline was before I got there, but it was very informational oriented. We are this who do this and that. And thanks, but that doesn't belong in the very first moment of me, a stranger's interaction with you. I want to see myself. I want to know you understand me, so that then I'll think about trying to understand you. All right, and we're almost done here, but I want to look at, especially in B2B communications, this is the range of sort of tones that people take. Of course, you never ever want to be in the aggressive tone. That turns people off immediately, and it should. The bigger or older or more culture bound the company is, very often you end up in boring, where they don't want to say anything that will invoke any kind of feeling in a target reader. And that does exactly as well as you think it might, right? And then I'm an advocate against humor in B2B. And if you're in a B2B selling environment, I promise you, whatever joke or funny situation you have in your head, it's a lot less funny when it's verbalized. Just try to stay away from humor. Humor almost always sounds cheesy. And other writing is about this, is where I had someone send me something once. They wanted to, instead of saying, "Hi, Dean," in an email, they wanted to say, "Hello, my friend." And I was like, it's very cringy. Like, these people don't know you. You're like, they've probably never heard, this is a cold email campaign. They've never heard your company's name before. And so you really want to stay away from stuff like that. Where most people end up is in the don't hurt me stage. Then the don't hurt me phase or tone in communications is this. You want to persuade someone of something, and yet at the same time, you're so afraid of rejection that you're actually trying to lean back or back away from them while you're saying something. You manage to convey in your tone that you're nuanced, that you're balanced, your competition has a lot of great features, and you may be interested in this, but maybe you're not, and all that kind of stuff. And people don't like that. It turns them off immediately, especially if it's the very first thing ever said to them. People want to relax into certainty. And so the only way they relax into certainty is if in that first second or two, you communicate, hey, you're in the right place. You're with the right people. We're one of you. We understand your world and your reality. And then it's like, oh yeah, okay, cool. And you can almost hear their breath change as they start working down through the rest of your copy. A homepage, email, whatever, right? But you must establish an assertive. And assertive is not even bold. Assertive is simply, this is true, and I'm going to say it's true, and I'm going to use declarative sentences, and I'm going to act as if it's true because it's true. That's it. And so, be truthful. Don't lie to anybody. I don't write stuff that lies to people, but, assertive, not aggressive, but definitely not the don't hurt me, and always stay away from boring and cheesy. Just say stuff that's true. I forget who it was who says that the beauty of always telling the truth is you never need to remember what you told people. It's basically along those lines. Just say true stuff. If you don't believe it, what you're saying, either you're lying or you have a confidence issue. If someone like me comes in, they're going to ignore your confidence issue, and they're going to be bold and be assertive anyway, because this is what works. And so, like, what's here that's assertive? Oh, I don't know. Yeah, probably that last one in the email list. Like, we're canceled. This is for you. Like, just assertive. This is it. This happened. Blah, blah, blah. By the way, it's not canceled as in culturally canceled. It's canceled as in an event was canceled. Here's all the stuff that we're going to send you. Okay. If you're having trouble deciding how you're going to immediately convey something interesting to someone, these three scenarios, only use one of the three, whichever one you want, whichever one is truer. Use one of those. So either something that everyone else believes was never true. Everyone always thought that, you don't get fired for buying IBM. Wrong. Turns out you absolutely could, because IBM doesn't sell something that does A, B, or C. That scenario. Or, and we saw this, like, something recently changed, is it was true, it's not anymore. Basically, a game of musical chairs has happened. The music has stopped. You were in this game, whether you knew it or not, or your company was in this game, whether it knew it or not. Something radically changed. And now, like, listen to me while I tell you how to, like, find a chair to sit down in and, stay in the game. Probably the biggest single one that's happening right there around that is around anything with AI. It's like, it was always true that we were going to do X. AI has completely upended that. Here you go. And then the last one is basically just segmentation, right? It was true. It's always been true. It's, still true for everybody, but not for you. If you're having any kind of challenge or difficulty, it's because you're different. This was not made for young companies or old companies. This was not made for people, in healthcare or financial services or manufacturing or marketing or whatever. It was not made for you. It's not true for you. I'm the solution. I'm different from what everyone else is using. And I'm the solution for people like you or companies like you. So you're basically carving them out, and telling them that they belong in a different tribe than what they thought. And also to externally absolve them of blame for any lack of success or that their company has had. Well, you were trying to do it this way. You can't do this with containerization and Kubernetes and network slicing. You have to have on-premise servers in a data center to do this kind of thing. So don't worry about that. Now, let's talk about how to get you to the same level as everyone else, even though you're not like them. There's a lot of things here. Don't bother reading them, because if you grab that QR code, or, with the slides or whatever, or I'll give you this in a second, this little URL in the lower left, like this takes you to a workbook that covers all of these. But I will say that the thing people have the most trouble with is the very first part that we go through, which is, how would a 9-year-old need to be told what you do? And people either still are too specific and talk about things a 9-year-old would not know, or they're so general that no one of any age could look at that sentence and know what it is this company does. And of course, the sweet spot is where you explain your concept, in simpler language. So don't worry about all this. This is all provided. You can do it at your leisure or not, but it's a useful exercise. You'll notice that all of these sentences, these questions, are basically getting you out of your head and trying to make you think like a stranger would think when they encounter you for the first time. And that takes us pretty much to the end of it. Just understand that the vast majority of our brain development was done in the Stone Age, and we're still in the Stone Age for usually the first moments of anything that's going to get our attention. Be noticed for something that's true about the person, less so about you. And when in doubt, just join their negative present and assert what their positive future could be. That's it for me. Yeah, I can probably stop sharing.
Thank you. So yes, if you can share the slides with me, I will
Sure.
upload it along with the recording later. But if anyone has any questions, now is the time to ask.
Somebody in this audience disagrees with something that I said based on hundreds of customer consultations. I tell you what.
I'll jump in. Dean, first and foremost, this is Tiffany. Nice to meet you. Thank you for today's session. I thought it was wildly informative, and I was over here taking like copious notes. And thanks for sharing the slides as well, because that will add to it. But I'm curious, like, how you think about the ideas that you shared in relation to engaging international audiences. Like, how would you take some of those and think about applying that?
I once worked for and spent a lot of time working for an Irish company. And at one point, someone in product marketing there, I worked in their group, and a great guy. I really loved working with him. And he said, like, Dean, what would you say is the main difference between marketing and to a European audience and an American audience? He says, because all of the major gurus and thinking about marketing always seems to come from America, right? And it seems very like saturated in marketing over there. But so, honestly, here's how deeply embedded marketing is in America versus Europe. I don't know if anyone knows what an Aldi is. It's sort of a German-based supermarket. I said they have Aldi all over Europe, and they have them all over here. Even my little town here has an Aldi. I said, you go into Aldi, and in Europe, in Dublin, it'll say beans, 99 cents, because they're on the euro, so they have cents, 99 cents. And in America, it would not be out of place for the little sign to say beans, 99 cents, exclamation mark. Like, we can't even resist trying to like jazz up beans. And so the main difference, or I have to do this a lot because I think well over half of my clients are outside the United States, is the main difference. What keeps me out of trouble for writing these hooks and stuff is that I write everything at no higher than a 4th grade English level. Now, this is not sort of a cultural thing. It just has to do with the fact that most people in the world who speak English learned it as their second language. And I work mostly in like tech and STEM, where even a higher percentage of people than generally in the world have learned English as their second language. They came here from China, they came from India or Pakistan or somewhere else, right? And so if I keep everything at a 4th grade reading level, and it keeps me honest, and it makes sure that they understand everything, and it makes sure that I'm not using any concepts or words that they're going to have to try to work at to understand. And I honestly, now I've done it for so many years, I don't have to use this tool, but I recommend everyone use a tool called Hemingway app, or if you just go to Google and type in Hemingway editor, it's usually like, hemingwayapp.com. And it tells you in real time what the reading level is of anything that you write or paste into it. But if you keep everything, it's almost like a it's guardrails. If you keep everything at a 4th grade English level, then those guardrails will keep you from moving too far in one way or the other culturally. Because, ultimately 4th grade English is 4th grade English.
That's super helpful tip. I'm going to go to the website now. Do you have like a quick follow-up question?
Yeah.
Do you have like recommendations on assertiveness levels? I think that's the one area that I have heard feedback on at times.
Yes.
Where
So
American assertiveness can come up a little too assertive depending upon the
Yes.
country that you're writing for.
So we had that like line graph, right? And there was like don't hurt me and aggressive, and assertive is in the middle. Assertive, unfortunately, is the smallest section of that tone spectrum. But even within that, you can lean more towards, I tend to lean more towards the don't hurt me language, for European and Southeast Asian markets. I'm still only writing in English, understand. I don't like writing in different languages. And then for the American or North American and South American market, and for the African market, I do, it's closer to the middle of, or, you know, start trending towards the assertive part of, the aggressive part of assertive. If you want very broad stereotyping, profiling kind of answer, there's your answer.
Thank you.
By the way, if anyone knows anyone in Antarctica, I'll work for just $1 because I've I mean, anyone who's been on any sort of session with me knows that, like, I will do anything to get a paid customer in Antarctica, because it is the only continent I have never been paid to work for a client for. And so I really want to complete my continental set. If you know a scientist or a research team or whatever else, like, I mean, dirt cheap, like thousands percentage points discount, just so that I can, like, technically say I had a paid client in Antarctica and therefore every continent in the world.
Tiffany's funny. She's like, no, I want to help you do that.
I actually have a client who's got business in Antarctica, so I may be able to
Now
get.
we're talking, Jeff.
Yeah. I'm talking to him later. I'll see what I can do for you. I have a question. You know, you mentioned, of course, don't say I or we in the hook.
Yes.
Do you think, do you recommend using it at all in the first page of a website, or stick with you on the first page and use it as a hook for the, hey, if you want more?
I try to not use I, we, or you, or your anywhere on a first page of a website if I can avoid it.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. In other words, I mean, the closest I ever came was when I had that slide, it's your turn. And that's just a really short, powerful phrase. But for everything else, the only time, the only one that had even the word I in it was our fictional business owner / visionary entrepreneur at the coffee shop saying, I have time, you know, so a future positive. It's not even me. I'm not the I in that. The reader is technically the I in that. Yeah. But if you, how it works is you can sort of write it in a we, or write it and say your, but then for any sentence where you have you or your, just look at that sentence and strip out that word and figure out how you're going to say it. So it's very clear that you're talking to them about them without ever saying the word you are. It usually only takes, like, you know, maybe a minute. Understand, like, it will take longer to write a hook or a first sentence or a headline than, like I said, any other sentence probably, you know, that follows it. But that's because it has such a key job, and it's worth putting a little extra effort into if it means more people will read the rest. But you can usually just sort of project yourself forward in time, or forward onto their side of the table or their side of the screen, and then rewrite it in a way so it's clear that you're talking to them about them without ever using the word you or your.
Awesome. Thanks. And your presentation was remarkable.
Oh, thank you. Don't forget me on that Antarctica thing. I'm like dead serious on that.
I'll text him right now while we're on.
Someone tried to convince me that I already, since I had clients in it in totally Argentina, and Argentina lays claim to part of Antarctica that technically I had, but I said, that's a bit dubious. I went to Wikipedia. It's really sketchy. So I'm not giving myself a pass on that. I want an actual. Man, to be the only copywriter in history who's worked on all 7 continents, that's going to kick ass. What a special boy I will be. Nobody has any disagreements?
Everyone's
Really?
feeling right today.
Nobody wants to push back on it.
Well, you're the expert.
Yeah.
There you go.
Simon,
Well, I mean,
yeah, I think that was a great presentation. I wouldn't deign to possibly disagree with any of it. Just a very quick question on the sort of 4th grade stuff.
yes.
You talked about it for a hook. Obviously, a hook is just the beginning of a website,
Right.
or you're describing yourself. What about the rest of the website? Do you feel that you need to try and keep as much of that language, sort of 4th grade, as you can, all the way through?
as much as possible. And here's the thing. I used to be a ghostwriter for mostly chief technology officers in tech companies in Silicon Valley and Atlanta. For some reason, Atlanta was the other big center that I had for clients. I don't live in Atlanta. And I would initially get pushbacks like, Dean, like, I don't want to simplify this too much, right? It'll come off as pandering to the audience, or it'll come off as, like I'm simplistic. And I say, let me write it like that. And because you can convey a surprising amount of complexity and stay with up to fourth grade English. Like you really can. And so, and I said, let's just try it, in different venues, and then we'll actually go and check with the audience and see what their reaction. And the reaction was absolutely uniform. It never changed. Like, wow, he really understands. It always seemed to be a guy as a CTO. Sorry. He really understands that stuff. Because he was able to tell it to every audience at a fourth grade level. Right? He knew it so well, he could explain it in terms that anyone could understand. It never failed. So there's a surprising amount of complexity possible and still stay within fourth grade English. And second, don't worry that you're going to be pandering to the audience. What's going to happen is, like I had a slide in there, right? People are going to like skim and scan, and you can either decry that or you can optimize for it. They're going to skim and rather, the only thing they might ever pay any real attention to is the hook. Everything else, they're going to like go through and like validate their initial feeling that the hook gave them, that they're in the right place at the right time for the problem that they have. And so they're going to like jump around. And so the simpler you can make all of that language, maintaining the complexity you need to, it's not platitudes and general statements at fourth grade. You do a lot at fourth grade, but they're going to skim around and scroll up and down. And so you can get more of it into their head without any filters or gates, the simpler the language is. The less cognitive load you put on that reader, especially for the first web page they're ever going to see from you, the less cognitive load you put on them, the more they'll retain and the longer they'll stay.
Yeah. As you say that, Dean, it makes perfect sense, because I spend a lot of my time trying to get founders of companies to say things when they're talking about their solutions in a way that someone who's never heard it before can actually understand it, rather than talking all the jargon. So, of course, brilliantly, as you answer that question, I'm thinking, yeah, of course, it's so obvious. So
another way to look at it is this.
Absolutely haven't done. So thank you.
You can imagine that for you to communicate, or the company to communicate and get something into someone's head. Okay. So it starts in yours and needs to go to theirs. There's, let's call it 100 fictional units of communication work, right? We'll create this fictional unit called communication work, right? You need to, if you think you're going to do 50 units of work and a stranger is going to do the other 50 units of work, you're going to be very lonely because no one's going to come close. But if you decide, okay, I'm going to do 90 of the 100 units of work, and I'm going to take it right up to them, I'll have done everything I can think of to make this as clear and understandable as I possibly can in the shortest amount of time, then you're going to have a lot more people pick up the last 10%. But the assumption that someone owes you labor to understand what you're trying to tell them and you're a stranger to them, it doesn't make any sense. Not in a world of literally endless and infinite distraction.
Yeah. Thank you very much. There's a lot you've gone through here. I need to probably read everything a dozen times and work.
You will enjoy the workbook.
Thank you. Yeah, I will.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question.
I don't have any more questions for myself. I should have brought one, but I did not. See, was there anything I forgot to mention?
Hold on, Jill, do you want to just
Yeah, go ahead.
that out loud? Because you wrote, what would you say about starting an email with a STA, S-T-A? I'm not sure what that stands for. Oh, stat. Oh, actually, Tiffany is suggesting that maybe it means stat. Jill, if you're in a place where you can talk, you can just join us. Otherwise,
Yeah,
can you
sorry, I
clarify?
wasn't sure if my audio was working. A lot of times you'll start with something like, you know, 9 need whatever, or Gartner says this, or, you know, you have some sort of stat that you're referencing to sort of anchor the conversation and to kind of give them the category that you're in and the problem that you're trying to solve. What do you think about using that in the body of the email as kind of as an opener or something like that?
So here's something we didn't talk about, and it's the safety question. So we talked about B2B and we talked about B2C and how, you know, it's B2C if the person you're talking to could make a purchase decision, like whip out a credit card or write up a PO or whatever. And so the safety question in B2B is, how do I know it's safe for me to vouch for you to my manager? Or how do I know it's safe for me to vouch for you in here at my company? You know, how do I know that you guys have done this for other companies? You're in a field where, you know, it's a lot of stable players, where you're going to be able to actually deliver what you say you can deliver. The project's not going to come in at 4x your budget, or 3 years from now, we're still going to be trying to stand this thing up or deploy it, kind of stuff. And so, and oh, by the way, in B2C, the safety question is, how do I know I won't regret this purchase? And so to answer the safety question, there's nothing wrong with using outside sources that validate it, but you'd never use it in a hook because it's complicated enough to have two parties communicating in a hook, you talking to them about them. You never want to introduce a third party because then it's too much. It's too much cognitive load for the first second or two that they ever deal with you. Plus, if it's true, if Gartner says X is true, it's true for more companies than just you. Gartner doesn't review one company. So in the body, sure, to answer the safety question, but not in the hook. Not third-party stats, no. All right.
Right, so I've been doing it all wrong. Good to know. Okay, thanks very much.
Sure.
Dean, Jeff actually got you in Antarctica. He just needs your email.
Dean at waycreative.com, W-A-Y-E creative. Oh, I am going to market the bejesus out of that once I finally do that work, man. For the rest of my life. It's like once you're elected president for the rest of your life, it's like, you know, I'm president, Dean, right? So like, whatever, I'll take it. Cool. Thanks very much, Jeff. Appreciate it.
No problem.
We
Email
are-
intro coming in 5 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, we are at time. Thank you so much. Let me stop recording.
All right. I'll make a PDF and send it to you.